This is not a theatrical scene. This is not a staged documentary shot. This is real. A Roma settlement on the edge of a European capital, where children run barefoot between half-collapsed buildings, while their fathers count cash from a day of scrap metal collecting, and their mothers plan a wedding for a 13-year-old bride. Yes, 13. And yes, it is normal here. A few streets away, a Roma patriarch sits in a marble villa worth millions, a palace with gold balconies, lion statues, and a chandelier bigger than the living room of a middle-class family. The house is not even finished because an unfinished house does not pay property tax. A survival trick turned into a lifestyle. And just outside Paris, police patrols quietly avoid an encampment where electricity is stolen from street lamps, water is siphoned from fire hydrants, and a single family may control the entire block, from begging networks to petty theft. Not a myth, a daily reality. The Roma, eternal travelers, eternal outsiders. A people without a country, but with their own courts, their own rules, and their own hierarchy, from teenage brides to barons who settle disputes in courtyards instead of courtrooms. In this video, we will follow them from India to Europe, from medieval slavery to modern welfare systems, from the poorest ghettos to palaces coated in gold. We will uncover why some Roma communities refuse to send their children to school, why many avoid paying taxes, why entire neighborhoods fear them, and why despite everything, they do not disappear. They are judged, feared, admired, resented, sometimes all at once. So who are the Roma really? Where did they come from? And why, even today, are they treated as unwanted guests almost everywhere they go? The Roma did not appear out of thin air, though for centuries Europeans believed exactly that. Some said they came from Egypt, which is how the word gypsy was born. Others insisted they were wandering magicians from Byzantium or some mysterious tribe that materialized out of nowhere. All wrong. The real origin story begins more than 1,000 years ago in northern India, not among kings, not among warriors, but among the lowest, poorest, most despised castes. People who worked with animal carcasses, leather, trash, waste, jobs no one else dared to touch. In that world, you did not move up, you did not escape, you inherited your fate. And the ancestors of today's Roma were the ones everyone else avoided, literally untouchables. So they left. Between the 3rd and 5th centuries, groups began drifting westward, slowly, unpredictably, like smoke carried by the wind. They passed through Persia, Armenia, the Caucasus. Some joined armies, some became musicians, some repaired metal or traded horses. Everywhere they went, they adapted religion, clothing, music, but they kept something of their own. By the time they reached Byzantium, Europeans had never seen anything like them. Dark-skinned, speaking a strange language, traveling without a homeland, performing music no one had heard before. They were exotic, fascinating, almost mythical, welcomed at first, celebrated even, but that would not last long. Because the moment Europe started demanding paperwork, taxes, and fixed addresses, the Roma were already walking in the opposite direction. When the Roma first arrived in medieval Europe, people were stunned. Bright clothes, loud music, caravans, animals, fortune tellers, a moving spectacle. Kings invited them to courts, towns gave them food, priests blessed them as wandering pilgrims. They were different but harmless, exotic but tolerated. Then Europe changed, faster than the Roma did. Documents became mandatory, taxes became sacred, borders hardened, stability became a virtue, and suddenly a people who lived by movement were breaking every new rule without even trying. No documents, no taxes, no fixed address, no loyalty to any king. Suspicion grew, and with it came myths. People accused them of terrible things. They said they steal children. They said they bring disease. They said they curse you. They said they are spies. They said they eat the dead. Yes, even cannibalism was an actual accusation. The same people once celebrated as musicians and craftsmen were now labeled criminals simply because they did not fit the new system. Europe's response was brutal. In Prussia, authorities ordered execution of all Roma over 18. In Sweden, executions without trial. In France, mass deportations. In Spain, forced assimilation, forced marriages to non-Roma, forced clothing changes, until it all collapsed into the infamous 1749 Great Gypsy Roundup, when over 12,000 Roma were arrested in a single day. Men were sent to hard labor, women and children were sent to prisons and monasteries. And yet the myths survived better than the people did. By the 1600s, you could see Roma villages displayed in fairs like zoo exhibits. People paid to look at the wild ones. Welcome to Europe, where curiosity turns into cruelty the moment someone refuses to live by its rules. As life in the West became impossible, many Roma moved east to Poland, Lithuania, Russia, the Balkans, where they were not welcomed, but at least they were not hunted. But there was one place where things were worse than anywhere else. Romania, where the Roma were literal slaves. They were owned by monasteries, noble families, and the state. They were sold, traded, inherited. This system lasted until 1856, later than slavery in the United States. By the time Europe finally ended Roma slavery, the damage was irreversible. A people already pushed to the margins were shoved even further out, and they would stay there for a long time. When the Soviet Union was born, it promised equality for everyone: workers, farmers, soldiers, intellectuals, everyone except those who did not fit the plan, and no one fit worse than the Roma. The early Soviet state did not care about ancient traditions, wandering caravans, campfires, or community courts. It cared about paperwork, it cared about plans, it cared about knowing exactly where every person was and what they were doing at all times. The Roma were a bureaucratic nightmare. No addresses, no passports, no stable jobs, no interest in Soviet order, just camps, music, horses, trading, and constant movement. So the state decided to fix them. Beginning in the 1920s, the government created 52 special collective farms exclusively for Roma families. They received land, livestock, tools, even cash, sometimes up to 1,000 rubles, all on one condition: stop wandering, settle down, become Soviet citizens. On paper, it looked like a grand social experiment. In reality, almost none of it worked. Only about 5% of nomadic Roma actually became farmers, and most of those only existed on paper to satisfy local officials desperate to meet quotas. The rest continued traveling, ignoring the state attempts to tame them. But then came famine, arrests, and the tightening of Soviet control. In 1933, as thousands fled starvation and authorities panicked, large Roma camps moved into Moscow. They settled on empty land, built makeshift homes, formed their own mini-districts inside the capital. The Soviet response was not negotiation, it was deportation. When the passport system was introduced, anyone without a fixed address or stable job was labeled undesirable. In just one summer month, more than 5,500 Roma were forcibly removed from Moscow and sent to Siberia. Over the next few years, more than 10,000 were deported across the Soviet Union. Some Roma cooperated, some joined the Red Army, some became partisans. 11 were even awarded the title Hero of the Soviet Union, but cooperation did not change the system. The Soviet Union ended Roma nomadism not through integration, but through paperwork. Once internal passports became mandatory, wandering became impossible. You could not move without permission. You could not exist without registration. So the camps stopped moving. Families built permanent homes. A centuries-old lifestyle ended, not with violence this time, but with stamps, signatures, and Soviet bureaucracy. And ironically, many Roma today look back at the late Soviet period with complicated nostalgia. Stable, predictable, tolerant in its own cold way. For the first time, they were left alone, as long as they obeyed. From the outside, a Roma camp looks chaotic. Noise, crowds, arguments, music, children running everywhere. Inside, it's the opposite. Everything has rules. Rules older than any European government. And at the center of those rules stands one figure, the Baron. Not a king, not a mayor. Something in between, and often more powerful than both. His word decides everything. Who marries whom, who pays compensation, who gets forgiven, who gets expelled. A baron's verdict can end a feud or destroy a family. And no police officer, no judge, no social worker has more authority inside the community. Justice is delivered not in courts but in yards surrounded by elders, family heads, and spectators. This traditional tribunal is called the Kris, a Roma court. There are no documents, no lawyers, no appeals. You speak, they listen, they decide. And the worst punishment isn't prison, it's exile. Exile in Roma culture means you stop existing. No greetings, no handshakes, no help, no family, no identity. In a world where survival depends entirely on your group, exile is social death. Inside the homes, life is crowded. A single house can hold 10, 20, 30 people. Privacy doesn't exist. Every mistake is public. Every conflict becomes a family-wide event. Women have traditional roles, strict, old-fashioned, sometimes oppressive. A woman who raises her voice can be disciplined by her husband and not always with words. Not everywhere, but in many communities, this is still considered normal. Girls rarely finish school. They're prepared for marriage, for motherhood, for domestic duties. Boys might study longer, but by age 10, many are already expected to earn scrap metal, street trading, cleaning car windows, working for relatives, helping with family business. And that's where things get complicated. When a community lives isolated for too long, it builds its own economy, its own way of surviving, legal or not. Some camps rely on seasonal work, some on trade, some on begging networks run by powerful families, some on small-time theft or smuggling, some on the heroin trade, the infamous Roma mafia reported in France, Germany, Italy, the Balkans, Ukraine, Russia. Not because Roma are born criminals, that is a myth, but because when you remove education, legal jobs, and integration, people go wherever money still exists, even if that place is dangerous, even if it's illegal. For many families, this underground system is simply survival, a legacy of centuries spent banned, expelled, forbidden from farming, forbidden from owning land, forbidden from joining guilds, and excluded from nearly every legal trade. And now, in modern Europe, that old survival instinct still shapes entire communities. In most cultures, a wedding is a celebration. In Roma culture, it is a weapon, a contract, a declaration of status, and sometimes a girl's entire future decided before she becomes a teenager. Because here, marriage happens early, very early, 12, 13, 14. Not everywhere, but in many communities across Romania, Bulgaria, Slovakia, Hungary, and the Balkans, this is the norm. Why so early? Because the younger the bride, the cleaner the reputation. A girl who is unmarried at 16 is already late. A girl who chooses her own boyfriend becomes a problem. Family honor depends on controlling her future before she can shape it herself. Parents do not ask if she loves him. They ask what family he is from, how much they can pay, what this alliance gives them. It is a business deal dressed as romance. And the wedding itself is a show of power. 3 days, 5 days, sometimes a full week, gold from head to toe, necklaces stacked like armor, dresses that weigh more than the bride, money thrown in the air, cars, microwaves, televisions as gifts, music loud enough to shake windows 2 streets away. And behind the bright colors is something darker, a bride who may not have finished primary school, a groom who may be 18, 20, or older, and a community that believes this is protection, not oppression. Because for them, keeping tradition alive is more important than personal happiness. A girl's mistake, even just rumors, can stain an entire family's reputation, so they marry her before life has a chance to. The cycle continues: early marriage, early pregnancy, early adulthood. By 25, some Roma women are already grandmothers. To outsiders, this seems unthinkable. Inside the community, it is simply the way things have always been. And anyone, even a girl who tries to escape the cycle, has to choose between freedom and family. Most choose family. The consequences of that choice echo for generations. If you think the weddings are extreme, wait until you see a Roma funeral. Because in most cultures, death is quiet. Soft voices, black clothing, tears. Here, death is loud. A Roma funeral can feel like a festival. Music, dancing, feasts, plates full of food, people laughing through their grief. Not disrespect. Tradition. The soul must not be pulled back by sorrow. It must leave this world with joy, not chains. Before burial, the body is washed in herbal infusions, dressed in bright, expensive clothes, adorned like someone attending a grand celebration rather than leaving life behind. And then comes the part outsiders struggle to understand: the grave goods, the gifts, the belongings, a watch, a phone, jewelry, cigarettes, alcohol, a blanket, a pillow, and yes, a television or a PlayStation if they loved gaming. Not a joke, not a myth, a reality. Because for many Roma, the next world is just a continuation of this one, and no one should arrive there empty-handed. And the tombs themselves, massive. Marble chambers, rooms built underground, crosses the size of trees, graves that cost $10,000, $30,000, sometimes $100,000 or more. Some look like small houses, some look like miniature palaces, and some are more expensive than anything the person owned while alive. Why? Status, love, pride, and competition. A final chance for the family to show who they are and who the deceased was. The richer the funeral, the more respected the family. Even in death, social hierarchy remains intact. For many Roma families, a poor funeral is worse than a poor life. And as strange as it looks to outsiders, inside the community it makes perfect sense. A life may fade, but honor must remain. If you want to see the most confusing neighborhood in Europe, go to Soroka, Moldova. Nothing prepares you for what is there. You turn a corner expecting poverty, and suddenly it looks like you have stepped into a bizarre alternate universe. Gigantic mansions, Greek columns, golden lions, turrets, domes, marble balconies, windows shaped like hearts and crowns, statues copied from Versailles, and right next to them, dirt roads, dust, rusting cars, barefoot kids, laundry hanging between palaces like ropes in a medieval market. It makes no sense until you understand the logic. These palaces are not meant to be lived in. They are meant to be seen. Most are empty. Some have one old sofa inside. Others have plastic chairs and a refrigerator from the 1990s. Because the purpose is not comfort, it is status, pure aggressive status. The bigger the house, the higher the rank of the family. Even an unfinished palace outshines a completed one. If a house is unfinished, you do not pay taxes on it. So many Roma leave windows open, tiles missing, walls unpainted, deliberately. A loophole turned into a cultural habit. Give the state nothing. Give your neighbors everything to talk about. But Soroca is not the only example. In Romania, on the millionaire street of Buzescu, things are even more surreal. Versace logos carved into facades, Mercedes emblems on rooftops, golden staircases, balconies shaped like crowns, domes like Ottoman palaces, a rainbow of colors that makes Las Vegas look subtle. And again, almost nobody lives there full time. These houses are trophies, not homes. A way of saying, we made it, we climbed, we survived. Because for a people who spent centuries enslaved, hunted, expelled, mocked, and pushed to the edge of every society, gold is not just decoration. Gold is revenge. And even if the rest of Europe laughs at the architecture, inside Roma culture, these palaces are proof that someone in the family succeeded. And that success, even if displayed in the strangest way, carries unimaginable weight. Not all Roma live in palaces. Most live in the exact opposite, places Europe tries hard not to show on camera. The most infamous is Lunik 9 in the Slovak city of Košice. The official population is about 6,500. The real population is easily 10,000 or more. 10, sometimes 15 people share a single apartment. Walls are collapsing, floors rotten, stairwells turned into dumps. No water, no gas, no electricity, not because the city does not have utilities, but because the bills were not paid, so everything was cut off. Garbage trucks stopped coming years ago. Diseases are constant, hepatitis, scabies, and skin infections. Police only come in groups. Bus drivers get hazard pay for entering the district. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Lunik 9 is not unique. It is just the most famous. Across Europe, there are dozens of Roma ghettos that look exactly like this, places most Europeans never see. In France, camps appear almost overnight on the outskirts of Paris, Lyon, and Marseille. Electricity is stolen from streetlights, water from fire hydrants. Police clear them out, and the camps reappear somewhere else within weeks. In Italy, abandoned buildings are taken over by Roma families, entire apartment blocks turned into improvised cities. Fires, overcrowding, raids, and evictions, a cycle repeating endlessly. In the Czech Republic, whole towns have segregated Roma buildings, separated from the rest by fences or invisible borders that everyone knows and no one admits. In Bulgaria and Romania, the poorest settlements blend into massive shanty towns, sprawling and unplanned, ignored by city governments for decades. In the UK and Ireland, Roma are caught between two worlds, squeezed into unofficial trailer parks or makeshift encampments that communities fight to evict year after year. And everywhere the same pattern repeats. Isolation, poverty, no school, no jobs, survival by any means, more isolation. A loop no one escapes unless they completely leave the community. Many who try end up returning because outside the community they have nothing and no one. Governments blame the Roma blame governments. NGOs blame discrimination. Residents blame crime. Politicians use the issue for votes. And meanwhile, the ghettos grow. To outsiders, chaos. To insiders, home. A place where everyone knows everyone, where help comes faster than police, where family is everything, and where leaving often feels more dangerous than staying. This is the side of Roma life Europe pretends does not exist. The side that fuels fear, the side that fuels stereotypes, the side that keeps the Roma locked in a role they never chose and cannot escape alone. In the 21st century, Europe claims to be open, tolerant, modern, and progressive. But mention the word Roma, and the room gets quiet. because the reality is messy, very messy. Welfare systems versus Roma traditions. Across Western Europe, social systems are caught in a contradiction. Europe expects integration. The Roma expect autonomy. Many Roma families do not work in formal jobs, not because they are lazy, but because community rules often forbid women from working, and young men are pushed into family-controlled trades. Scrap metal, street selling, begging networks, seasonal work, borderline legal jobs. Welfare became the bridge between tradition and survival, and this created a backlash. Roma accuse governments of discrimination. Governments accuse Roma of abuse. Citizens accuse politicians of doing nothing. Everyone is frustrated. No one agrees on why. The begging networks. Not all begging is innocent. In major cities, Paris, Milan, Zurich, and Vienna, organized Roma groups control prime begging locations. They control metro entrances, tourist spots, traffic intersections, and ATM areas. Some networks operate like small businesses. They schedule begging shifts, set quotas, and collect money centrally. They use children because children attract more sympathy. Is it every Roma? No. But the visibility is high and perception becomes reality. Petty crime and pickpocket rings. In tourist capitals, the pattern is familiar. A group of children surrounds a person. One distracts, one steals, one runs, all vanish. Police often identify the groups, but the children are underage, untouchable by law, and released immediately. The result is a public stereotype Europe cannot shake, and Roma cannot escape. Section 4. Scrap metal, car parts, and the gray zone. In Eastern Europe and the Balkans, whole settlements survive by stripping abandoned factories, taking copper wiring, scrapping old cars, dismantling machinery, and salvaging anything metal. Is it legal? Sometimes, sometimes not. Often ignored, because police know it is the only income for hundreds of families. A survival economy built in the shadows of collapsing industries. 5. Forced prostitution and trafficking. In some regions, especially the Balkans, Italy, and Spain, organized Roma groups have been linked to forced begging, forced shoplifting, and sex trafficking. Victims are often women from their own community, sometimes from outside, and sometimes minors. This is not the majority, but it exists, and governments often fail to deal with it. Education, a crisis. No one solves. Across Europe, Roma children have the lowest school attendance rates. Not because schools exclude them, though segregation happens, but because girls marry early, boys work early, families fear outside influence. Mobility disrupts attendance. Language barriers remain. The result? A new generation raised in the same cycle as the last. No skills, no jobs, no integration, no escape. 7. Neighborhood tension, fear, anger, and misunderstanding. Ask any European community near a Roma settlement, and you hear the same list. Noise, thefts, begging, garbage, illegal building, unfinished houses, intimidation, sudden conflicts, police avoidance. Ask the Roma, and they say racism, discrimination, police harassment, no opportunities, isolation, poverty, propaganda. Both sides are right, and both sides are wrong. This is the modern Roma paradox, a people fighting to preserve their identity in a world that demands they change, and a world that resents them for not changing. Europe doesn't know what to do with them. And the Roma aren't interested in being told what to do. The result is endless, exhausting tension with no clear way out. So who are the Roma? A people without a country, without borders, without a single flag, but with a history that outlived every empire that tried to erase them. They survived slavery, expulsions, ghettos, communism, and modern discrimination. They survive by bending rules, making their own laws, and holding on to traditions stronger than any government policy. And that's the paradox. Europe wants them to integrate. The Roma want to remain Roma. So the cycle continues. Gold-plated palaces beside collapsing ghettos, teenage weddings beside ancient customs, family loyalty beside modern conflict. A people feared, judged, romanticized, and misunderstood all at once. Even in the 21st century, the Roma remain Europe's eternal outsiders, unwelcome almost everywhere, unbroken everywhere they go.